Hi there, this is Erin O'Toole, Leader of Canada's Conservatives. I'm glad to welcome you to our telephone town hall tonight in Newfoundland and Labrador. We're also live on Facebook. Tonight we're talking about your choice in the election. This election is about who Canadians trust to secure the future of our country. You'll have the chance to ask me any questions about Canada's recovery plan, our plan to get the economy back on track. If you have a question for me, Erin O'Toole, Leader of Canada's Conservatives, please press *3 right now. Or if you're watching on Facebook, put in a question in the comments below. I want to be clear about this. We should not be having an election in the middle of a pandemic. A leader would be thinking about how to meet the threat of a Delta-driven fourth wave, how to secure our recovery, how to tackle highly impacted sectors, how to tackle skyrocketing costs of living for many Canadian families. It's quite frankly reckless to be calling an election at this critical moment for no reason. Instead, Justin Trudeau is focused on one reason: his own narrow political interests. After years of over-promising and under-delivering for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, Mr. Trudeau thinks he should be rewarded with a majority. There are 4 parties on the ballot, but there are only 2 choices: Canada's Conservatives or more of the same. Together with the Liberals, the NDP and the Greens have an agenda of more borrowing, more debt, higher taxes, rising prices, and less opportunities for families in Newfoundland and Labrador. But Canada's Conservatives will stand up for hardworking Canadians and their families from coast to coast to coast. That's why we're running on Canada's recovery plan that I launched today. It's a plan to get Canada's economy firing on all cylinders, including in Newfoundland and Labrador. Our plan is, first, secure 1 million jobs in 1 year, those that we lost in the pandemic, helping kickstart the offshore in Newfoundland and Labrador. Second, accountability. We're going to introduce tough new anti-corruption laws to clean up the mess in Ottawa. Third, mental health, by implementing our Canada Mental Health Action Plan to help families hit in this pandemic. Fourth, the country needs to be more prepared. We'll build up our capacity to respond to future pandemics and threats. And finally, securing the economy by balancing the federal budget over the next decade. If you have a question about any of these 5 pillars, hit *3 to ask me live. Erin O'Toole, Leader of Canada's Conservatives, being accountable to you. Canada's recovery plan includes a detailed environmental plan that will empower Canadians to make greener choices and reduce emissions to meet our Paris targets without impacting jobs and investment. Canada's Conservatives will secure the future of communities up and down the Atlantic coasts. I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight. And as I said, if you have a question for me live, *3, hit that right now. Or if you're watching with us on Facebook or on YouTube, provide a comment and we'll do our best to get to it. And the person that's going to be organizing this live chaos tonight is my good friend and MP Michael Barrett. Michael, take it away.
Well, it's a real pleasure to join you tonight. As Erin said, my name is Michael Barrett, and I've served as the Member of Parliament for Leeds-Grenville-Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes, and I'll be your moderator this evening. And I'm incredibly proud to be part of your team, Erin, and it's so exciting now that we've had a look at Canada's recovery plan. Now, as those listening and watching will know, Erin was raised in Bowmanville, Ontario, with middle-class values of hard work and helping your neighbor. Before his career in politics, he served our country in the Royal Canadian Air Force and sailed with our Atlantic Navy. Now, Erin, you told me that you're pretty sure you're the only member of Parliament to land on the Hibernia platform. And with Canada's recovery plan, Erin O'Toole will stand up for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador and fight for Canadians everywhere. This telephone town hall is about to start. So as Erin said, press *3 if you want to ask him a question. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, comment below to ask that question. Again, if you have any questions for the Leader of Canada's Conservatives, Erin O'Toole, press *3 now if you're listening. Now, if you're watching online, please enter a comment and we'll get to your question. So I'm going to start with one of our callers. We've got Mike from Sweet Bay, and Mike wants to ask about recovering the economy in Newfoundland and Labrador. Mike, you're live with Erin O'Toole now.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they have a plan for job creation in Newfoundland. We're in dire straits here. There's not much work. It's been terrible, and the road structure and everything here is really all our infrastructure is terrible, and there's no work, and there's no work ongoing. And I'm wondering if they have a plan to try to help us bring us back to what the rest of Canada is.
Well, thank you, Mike. One thing I know, having served alongside Newfoundlanders and Labradorians in the military, proud, hardworking people, and want the opportunity to fulfill that. In fact, there's been thousands of Newfoundlanders going out west for opportunity to return home to help their family. That's the culture. Work hard, provide for your family and your community. And as Michael said, I served on HMCS St. John's, and I got to serve alongside some incredible people. Job creation and opportunity for all Canadians, including Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, is central. So here's what we're going to do, Mike. Our plan today, Canada's Recovery Plan, has a specific section called the Offshore Rebound Fund, a $1.5 billion investment to kickstart development in our offshore. Mr. Trudeau, Mr. O'Regan have completely shut down opportunities. We've seen thousands of jobs lost. There's an inability to get anything done in the offshore, even though this is an incredible resource, very low carbon emission energy from our offshore. We need to take advantage of it. It's 25% of the Newfoundland and Labrador economy. So we're going to kickstart confidence in that. So important for jobs, and it allows Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to be self-sufficient and get the economy moving. And the trickle effects, particularly in St. John's, are incredible. Second, I've talked directly within operators, with tourism operators in Newfoundland and Labrador. So important, showcasing the beauty of Newfoundland and Labrador and the great people. So we have a targeted program in our first pillar of our recovery plan to help the highest impacted sectors: travel, tourism, hospitality, restaurants. We're going to kickstart that job recovery for Main Street. We're going to help with employment opportunities. We're going to help those businesses get back on their feet. And finally, the fishery. When I was in Newfoundland and Labrador about a month ago, I visited Icewater in Arnold's Cove. Processing our fishery, both the inshore and the wider fishery, are critical for the economy. And we need to make sure Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have faith in it. And that's another thing. I got to work on fishery patrols on board HMCS St. John's. I've been on the Flemish Cap, on the Grand Banks. I know how hard Newfoundlanders and Labradorians work. We're going to have your back. Please check out Canada's Recovery Plan. And Mike, we've got a great team running in Newfoundland and Labrador. You deserve a voice, and you haven't had that with the Liberals.
Well, thanks for that, Erin, and thanks for that great question, Mike. If you have a question and you want to ask Erin O'Toole, Leader of Canada's Conservatives, press *3 now. The next question comes from Robert, who's wondering about the Conservatives' plan for seniors. Go ahead, Robert. You're live with Erin O'Toole now.
Hello, sir. Yes, my name is Robert, and I'm just wondering what's going to come up for senior citizens. I mean, we're living on that fixed income, you can call, and we're only barely living. And, you know, and no such things as a raise coming into us or anything like that. And a little bit of carrying a pension, and been done about carrying a pension or old age pension since I got old enough to drive, right? So I was wondering what's coming in for the old age pension people.
Well, thanks, Robert. We have to be there for our seniors. You know, they built this great country, and we need to make sure that we're there for them, particularly vulnerable seniors who are having trouble keeping up with the cost of living. We've seen inflation become a problem for the first time in decades. Mr. Trudeau's spending, some of the economic decisions that are hollowing out jobs are also at the same time driving up costs for home heating, for food, for groceries. We need to tackle this. So we're going to have a few things. We're going to have the the Canada Senior Care Benefit, where we're going to work with families to make sure that they get some support, some direct support, if they're able to care for a parent in their home, as part of an option to help families for senior parents over 70. We're going to make sure that cost of living and support is there for pensioners, particularly on income supports and other things. We're going to do that. We're going to have a GST holiday in December to make sure that we not only allow people to get out there and have a little more at a time at the end of the year when we're looking to come together. It will also have a benefit for bricks and mortar store, because it'll have to be a bricks and mortar purchase so that we can help the mom and pop operators. So Canada's Conservatives have a good track record, Robert, when it comes to supporting our seniors. We created pension income splitting. We brought in the tax-free savings account that helps seniors. We lowered taxes. We raised the basic personal exemption. We're going to give working Canadians a raise in the lower income levels. So we're going to be there, Robert, and I want you to know we're going to be a government that listens and always stands up for our seniors.
Another great question. And if you have a question for Erin O'Toole, press *3 on your phone now. We'll also run a poll throughout this call. And if Canada's Conservatives can count on your vote on Election Day, press 1. If you're going to vote for another party, press 2. And if you're undecided, press 3. But tonight, if you'd like to ask a question to Erin O'Toole, press *3 on your phone now. Our next question comes from Joe, and Joe has a question about how divided our country is. Joe, you're live with Erin O'Toole now.
Good evening, Mr. O'Toole, and thank you for your service in this country. My question is related to how divided our country has become. Years ago, the federal government used to be the entity that tied in all of our provinces, and right now it seems to be lacking in that respect. I'm wondering what your plan is to tie this country again together.
Well, thank you, Joe. I think you're right. I've never seen the country more divided in my lifetime. In fact, think back to when the Conservatives were the government. We didn't have national unity crisis. The separation party from Quebec, the Bloc Québécois, was not an official party. There were no separation movements in Alberta or Saskatchewan. Now there are. And so we have a lot of people kind of losing faith in Canada, country I love and was proud to serve alongside some exceptional Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So we're going to act to heal that. The biggest thing is respecting provincial jurisdiction and respecting the ability for a province to develop economic opportunities for its people, like the offshore in Newfoundland and Labrador. As Michael said, our Sea King helicopter, when I was in the Navy, landed on the Hibernia platform. We did that because we know the tragedies of the past, like the Ocean Ranger, so we always try to be familiar with the offshore rigs. Newfoundlanders, Labradorians work hard, not just in the offshore. They've done that out west in the energy sector too. They work hard in the fishery. And we need to make sure that provinces aren't being held back from an Ottawa knows best. Mr. Trudeau's done that with a number of bills that have not only hurt Alberta and Saskatchewan, they've hurt Newfoundland and Labrador. I also, a few months ago, Joe, said that we're going to fix fiscal stabilization. What that means is when a province has a steep drop-off on resource revenues, they shouldn't be overpaying into equalization. So we're going to offer an equalization rebate for provinces that were caught by that, and we're going to backdate it. So that will help Newfoundland and Labrador. It will also help some other provinces. And here's the kicker. All the premiers agree, but yet Mr. Trudeau hasn't acted. So we have to heal this great country. I've served the country my entire life in uniform, as a volunteer in the private sector, and now in Parliament. I think Canada's best days are ahead of us, Joe, but we have to work together. We have to respect one another, and we need to get the country back on track, and that's exactly what our recovery plan will do. A detailed plan to get our economy surging in the right direction in all parts of the country, including Newfoundland and Labrador, for the outports, for the towns and cities. Check out the plan. I hope we can earn your vote.
If you have a question for Erin O'Toole, press *3 on your phone now. Our next question comes from Annie, and she has a question about how we're going to keep youth in Newfoundland and Labrador. You're live with Erin O'Toole right now, Annie.
Hi, Erin.
Hi, Annie.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'm a grandma, and it always seems like we're listening to what the planning is, while, you know, things in the moment seems to be what's more urgent. There's nothing wrong with planning. I'm just wondering what is going to happen to the grandkids. I got a grandson who's already talking his own business in Newfoundland and Labrador, because Newfoundland's too beautiful to leave Nanny. So I want to have a business. I mean, is something like that going to be possible down the road for our grandchildren? How hard is it going to be for young people of today that's being, you know, raised here in Newfoundland to be able to stay here? What's going to be done? It's utmost important in my mind to keep our young people here, to keep Newfoundland alive.
Well, thank you for the question, Annie, and that's an issue all of Atlantic Canada always tell me about, is the worry that there's a lack of opportunities for their kids and grandkids, and Newfoundland and Labrador is beautiful, Nanny. I've been able to see a lot of parts of the province through my time in the military, including little outports like Francoise on the Avalon, where we took the Lieutenant Governor of Newfoundland and Labrador, a gentleman named Maxwell House at the time. I'll never forget that name because of the coffee.
That's right.
But we need to make sure there's opportunities. In fact, Atlantic Canada has great universities. And to think, you educate some of your best and brightest, and then they have to go west. So let's make sure we kickstart that. As I said, the offshore and making sure that rebounds, and we have an offshore rebound fund in our platform, but that has a trickle effect. St. John's has had tech and other companies sprout out for offshore, geo-tracking, that are derivative jobs from the investment in offshore resources. We have a plan here, Annie, that will actually provide a Rebuild Main Street tax credit to allow some Canadians to have a tax assist if they invest in the small business in their community. We have a fund that will actually provide a business loan for businesses within communities. We need to actually have more entrepreneurship, more small businesses, because those are opportunities for Canadians. 2/3 of Canadians work for a small or medium-sized business, not big businesses. So what can we do to stabilize things, to help them, to kickstart an economic recovery in all parts of the country? That's in our plan, Annie, and we want more people being able to stay, work, and raise their children, buy a home, and be part of the communities that they're from. They should have that option. So please tell your grandson to check out our plan, Annie, and we want him to have success in Newfoundland and Labrador.
If you have a question for Erin O'Toole, press *3 on your phone now. We're also running a poll throughout this call. If you are going to vote for Canada's Conservatives on Election Day, press 1. If you're voting for one of the other parties, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. Erin, I've got a question online, and this question comes from Janet. Janet says, what will you do for mental health in practical terms?
Well, thanks, Janet. The third pillar of our recovery plan is Canada's Mental Health Action Plan. It is so important to our team that this is one of our 5 pillars. This is going to be a part of the pandemic that will be a challenge for our society for years to come. We've seen skyrocketing numbers of youth depression, anxiety, eating disorders. We have skyrocketing addictions. We've seen an alarming rise in domestic violence. We have to address some of the crises that we're having within our society. So we're going to invest. We're going to partner with the provinces on mental health and mental health supports. But we're also going to go further. We're going to work with nonprofit groups on the ground. I've learned from my own time, Janet, as a veteran and a volunteer before I got into politics, sometimes the people helping need the most on the ground are volunteers. Nonprofits, Rotary clubs, veterans helping veterans, church organizations, others helping needs on the ground. So we're going to empower that with a granting program to give them more capacity to handle the surge in mental health challenges. We're going to partner with employers. We want to incentivize more employers to provide mental health supports, benefits, wellness packages. It's good for our country after COVID. It's good for the workforce. I've seen this with good employers who know it is. So how can we encourage more of them to do it and some of them that have it to enhance it? And finally, something our team has worked on, and Michael knows this, we've been advocating for 10 months for a national 3-digit suicide prevention hotline. We need all options to make sure no one feels forgotten. It's been a tough year for our country. I don't think there's a family that hasn't had a direct impact in their family or with their neighbors or their close friends. So let's show some leadership. And for me, this is personal. On mental health issues, I've worked on them since I left the military. And I've seen, if you reduce the stigma, you get people the help they need, they can get on their path to wellness. And that's what our country needs to do after COVID.
If you have a question for Erin O'Toole, press *3 on your phone now. Our next question comes from John, who's been in the fishing industry for 30 years, Erin, and he's got a question about local control. And so, John, you're live to ask your question with Erin O'Toole now.
Good day, Mr. O'Toole. First, I'd like to thank you for your service to our country. But getting to my question, what I'm wondering, I'm in Newfoundland. I've been involved with fishery for 30 years now. One of the key points that I see that is a real holdback to the Newfoundland fishery, and unlike other industries and whatnot, we've got a resource here unlike anything else anywhere else on this planet, and we're really underutilizing it. My question is, would a conservative government led by yourself consider and make it so that right now most of our fisheries regulations and policies are developed and implemented by a federal government led by Ottawa? I think that this is a major stumbling block for us as a province. And would your conservative government consider moving some more? I know we can't take it all at once, but would it consider passing back the management of our fishery resources back to the province, and in doing so, give it the ability and some of the funds that are used today to make it so that our decision making can be done within our own province?
Well, thanks for the question, John, and that's an interesting one. You know, when I was in Newfoundland about a month ago, I was talking about this very issue with Clifford Small, our candidate in Coast of Bays, Central Notre Dame, who comes from a long line of a fishing family, and he was a captain himself. And our candidate, Sharon Vokey, she's the one in Bonavista Buren Trinity that took me to the ice water processing plant. And constantly what they're hearing and what they're saying to us is DFO has lost sort of the confidence of the folks on the ground. And this is something that I think the federal government has to be attuned to, that when Ottawa is no longer trusted as a guardian of an important resource, or if Ottawa interferes with economic development in a province, you have to reestablish that confidence. And we want to do that. I saw that when I was a minister, and veterans were losing faith in the department of the federal government. They were suing the government that I was a part of at the time. I was able to at least temporarily resolve that and win back the trust. But there needs to be a reestablishment of trust and science and transparency with DFO. And this is something I heard repeatedly in Newfoundland and Labrador. I've also heard repeatedly in British Columbia and when I was in the Miramichi, actually. So we have to have fairness here. It has to follow the science, but we have to make sure that we reestablish that. So, John, that's kind of a yes. We will have regaining confidence by making sure Newfoundland and Labrador, both for the inshore and the wider fishery, have confidence in the regulation. We have to make sure we preserve stocks, but we also have to have the balance. That includes the seal hunt and other things that factor into the whole environment. You know, that's why I respect traditional things like a humane seal hunt. It's part of the balance there to make sure that stocks can be replenished. So we're going to work with you, John, and I've met so many people, both on the boats and in the plants. At Icewater, they had pictures of some of their employees who'd been 30, 40, 50 years working for them, and that's hard work, and I'm going to stand up for hardworking families.
You can press *3 now to ask Erin O'Toole a question. Also, throughout the call, we're running this poll. If Canada's Conservatives can count on your vote on Election Day, press 1. If you're going to vote for one of the other parties, press 2. If you haven't yet made up your mind, press 3. We have a caller who pressed *3 to ask their question to Erin O'Toole, and that's Justin. He has a question about
Justin.
Justin.
Okay.
Justin from Spaniards Bay, not not Justin
from Papineau.
From Papineau.
Okay.
So Justin, you're live with Erin O'Toole now.
Hello, Mr. O'Toole. Thank you for your service. I'm just wondering, what's the Conservative Party's plan to recover our offshore industry and create investment and interest in our natural resources, securing the future of generations to come?
Well, thank you, Justin. Finally, a Justin that cares about the offshore
That's
in
right.
Labrador. No, I thank you for the question. As I said at the outset, Justin, I'm really proud of what our offshore industry has provided for Newfoundland and Labradorians. It allows that self-reliance that is at the core of the province. Yeah, an incredible history, an incredible rich and proud people that work hard, and they want that opportunity. And what has been frustrating under Justin Trudeau and Seamus O'Regan, the province has been used as kind of a prop and has been held back. And so when we talk about the attacks on natural resources, many people think of just Western Canada. It's also hurt Newfoundland and Labrador. And not fixing fiscal stabilization, that's also hurt Newfoundland and Labrador. So we're going to give a boost. The Offshore Rebound Fund, which is in our new Canada's Recovery Plan, and Justin, you can check this out online. Go to the Conservative Party's website. It's all there. It's a $1.5 billion fund to restore confidence that's been eroding. In the last few years, we've lost thousands of jobs because of the uncertainty caused by Ottawa. When Mr. Trudeau says he's going to transition entire sectors of the economy, when we need jobs the most coming out of COVID, we're going to give that confidence back. And as I said earlier, the ripple effects across the entire Newfoundland and Labrador economy are profound. And this energy, this offshore, is some of the lowest intensity oil that's retrieved. The vision seen by John Crosby of allowing that reliance, and Hibernia is an example of that, is something that allowed some really good opportunity. And as I said, some of the startups we've seen in Newfoundland that have come as a result of that injection of jobs and investment, we need to kickstart that. We are the only party that wants to get all sectors of the economy back on their feet, all regions of the country back on the feet. Mr. Trudeau talks about building back better. That's who he thinks should be better. And going back to Joe's question, that approach, that Ottawa knows best approach, is dividing the country. It's making us less prosperous, and it's making us less relevant on the world stage. So Justin, please check out our plan. If you have any questions, send us a note. We want to earn your vote.
Our next question comes from an expert in the healthcare industry. Kimberly is a nurse, and she's got a question about healthcare in Newfoundland, Labrador. Kimberly, you can go ahead. You're live with Erin O'Toole now.
Thank you. Hi,
I'm a nurse in a long-term care home here in Newfoundland, and recently, since Christmas Day, that the government has come out with so many changes. We've lost nurses on the floor. We're working, doing double the work that we should be doing. And we've had another issue in the last few days. We've had a really hot weekend, and we have no air conditioning, no air exchanger. It was like you're talking about 28 degrees and a 70% humidity that we worked through all day. It's really tough. We're losing nurses. We just had a really nice nurse, a registered nurse, come with us, and she is leaving already due to some of the issues that we are facing at this long-term care home. It is not the care as we've seen in a lot of, there's no neglect or care. This is all concerning the cutbacks to the nursing staff, and I'm wondering what you, as if you become our new leader, are going to do about this.
Well, first, Kimberly, thank you for your work over the last 15 months. You know, Michael and I and our caucus have talked about just how heroic the actions of our nurses, our doctors, folks in the hospital, our PSWs in the long-term care sector. Thank you for being on the front lines. I know there's a burnout, there's a fatigue, and you know, you just talked about losing a great colleague as a result of that. So let me say a few things, because obviously health is run provincially, but there is a role here for the federal government to be a partner, not a paternalistic overlord from Ottawa. It's about partnering. So today in Canada's recovery plan, our detailed plan to get the country back on track, we've said we will provide stable, predictable, and without condition healthcare transfers with a minimum of 6%. We also want to get the economy surging, and that will make that a minimum. So 6% increasing amount for the health transfer to the provinces. On top of that, we're going to have, as I said, some additional programs for mental health supports. So for some of the groups, and some groups are even working on that fatigue, on that increased mental strain on some of the folks on the front lines from the pandemic. And so if there are groups on the ground to help, we want to build their capacity. To use a military term, we want to be a force multiplier for groups who are already on the ground. We can just sometimes be a partner with a grant or funding opportunity. And finally, Kimberly, something that I know with respect to Newfoundland and Labrador has one of the highest proportions of foreign physicians who come to practice in Newfoundland and Labrador. I've talked about accelerating the recognition of foreign credentials, and I know this is critical to help us replenish the ranks and address some of the issues in the healthcare system and in the seniors and long-term care systems. So we're going to have a task force to accelerate a process that has been hard to crack over the last couple of decades, but we're going to bring the provinces, the unions, the associations, the bodies together to accelerate that, because we need immigration in Canada. We need to accelerate the recognition of credentials. It's good for our country, and it's so good for the fulfillment of people coming here to be able to work in the profession they've been trained in. So Kimberly, stay strong. I give my best to everyone you work with, and please check out our plan. We'd like to earn your trust as well. It's time for a government with a plan that's going to be focused on the needs of Canadians, not the needs of their friends.
Our next question comes from Willis. If you have a question for Erin O'Toole, press *3 on your phone now. Willis has a question about keeping promises. So Willis, you're live with Erin O'Toole. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi,
Willis. Willis, you're live with Erin O'Toole. You can go ahead with your question.
Yes. I'd like to know what you got for seniors, because we're not getting enough to live on.
Well, thanks, Willis. Robert asked earlier about seniors. We have to have the backs of seniors, and the inflation we're seeing, driven by Mr. Trudeau's spending and the lack of opportunity in some parts of our economy, is making the cost of living hard for seniors. We see rising costs on the essentials, and we see income and senior support programs flat. So we're going to try and make sure that there's always a way to keep up with the cost of living. We're going to give an injection for seniors' care and for families that can help a senior live within the family. We're going to have a Canada Senior Care Benefit. We're going to try and make sure that taxes stay low, and we provide supports for low-income seniors as well. And this is another reason why we have to be a partner on healthcare. Seniors obviously are at a point in their life that they draw more on the healthcare system. We just heard from Kimberly, the system's kind of at a breaking point in some parts of the country. So we want to come in as a partner. We want to increase spending on a predictable level that allows the provinces to address some of the needs from COVID. And the fourth pillar of our Canada's recovery plan is to be more self-reliant as a country, to secure capacity at home for vaccines, rapid tests, other things we need to keep our country safe, but particularly seniors who were a vulnerable population. We saw just complete tragic cases in the first wave of the pandemic. So we've got a very comprehensive plan that's looking at getting our economy booming again so that we can actually make sure we have enhanced programs to care for folks, particularly seniors at the margins.
If you are going to vote for Canada's Conservatives on Election Day, you can press 1 now. If you're going to vote for one of the other parties, you can press 2. And if you're undecided at this point, you can press 3. Now, Erin, before we get to the next caller, I have a question. And during this last Parliament, I was honored to be asked by you to be the Shadow Minister for Ethics. And I'm very happy to have had the opportunity, but I've got to tell you, I think I was one of the busiest shadow ministers on the front bench because we were dealing with, as you know, a prime minister who was, twice found guilty of breaking ethics laws, the first prime minister in history, and Canada's recovery plan. How are we going to restore Canadians' confidence in parliamentarians and their democratic institutions?
Well, thanks, Michael. You did a great job. The two busiest people in Ottawa under Mr. Trudeau in recent years has been you, our ethics critic, and the ethics commissioner themselves, the various one. Mr. Trudeau has so many investigations. The latest report was called Trudeau 3. They have to number the investigations into Trudeau. It was Morneau 2 before he resigned.
Unbelievable.
And if you look at the cover-up of sexual misconduct allegations in the Canadian Armed Forces, the cover-up of what's going on with the Winnipeg lab and the Chinese, the scientists with connections to the Chinese state and the military. Mr. Trudeau's covering that up so much, he's going to court to defy the will of Parliament to keep his secrets. I'm actually going to intervene to stop that. So there's been a culture of cover-up. There's been a culture of helping your friends get ahead with the We Charity scandal, as you showed. The Trudeau family and people close to the Prime Minister had been paid $500,000, and then the same group didn't register to lobby and then suddenly got an untendered contract to pay volunteers. I thought there was sort of a altruism of volunteering. So this was a made-up program to help the Friends of the Liberal Party. No question about it. So the second pillar of our plan, new anti-corruption laws. We need to restore confidence of Canadians in our system, more transparency, so there'll be no loopholes in the lobbying like we saw with We and other instances. There'll be actual penalties, serious penalties for serious breaches of ethics laws. You want to know why there's repeated investigations, Mr. LeBlanc, is because there's no accountability.
So more than a $200 fine?
more than the nuisance charge that is there now. And as I joked in Arnold's Cove at Icewater Seafood, we were at a fish processing plant. I said, with the ethical scandals, they say the fish rots from the head, right? The Prime Minister is leading the Liberal pack on ethical breaches. What does that say to our kids and grandkids when there's just constant cycles of investigations? So I think this is about restoring trust in federal institutions, from the Prime Minister's office to the Canadian Armed Forces. We've called for 6+ months for an independent investigation, an independent complaints program for women serving their country that have not been able to do it free of harassment. So I think this is a time to restore trust. And as we said earlier, there's a lot of division, there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. We need a strong plan, we need an ethical government, and we need a plan for recovery.
Well, this is definitely a plan for recovery. Our next caller comes from James, and James has a question James is from Gander. It's a question based on his experience having served in the Canadian Forces. James, thank you for serving our country. You're live now with Erin O'Toole.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And hello, Mr. O'Toole.
Hi, James.
Sir, I just have a question on, and it's in respect with Veterans Affairs. I know our people that work at Veterans Affairs, they're doing an amazing job out there helping us veterans and stuff that have some troubles after our time in the service. And my question is that will a new government be hiring more staff to be working at Veterans Affairs to help expedite a lot of these backlog claims? Personally speaking, I have claims in now, and I'm waiting about 2 years. And there's other veterans out there that I know that are waiting longer. I know with the COVID situation, it's certainly disrupted the flow of a lot of things. But you got veterans out there that are hurting, sir. And I just wondering if something could be done to help expedite these claims and help out the veterans in need that served their country with pride.
Well, thank you, James. Thank you for serving our country with pride, and I really appreciate what you've done for our country and your friends and comrades. And Michael served in the Canadian Armed Forces as well, and so we're both in your corner. If I become Prime Minister, I would be the first Prime Minister with military service since Lester Pearson. And I want to continue some of the work that I started when I was Veterans Minister. And the biggest thing, James, is all major claims should be resolved before you even hang your uniform up. We called it the gap between the Department of National Defence and Veterans Affairs Canada. We need to close the gap. And when people are, especially when someone's being released for a physical or mental injury from service, they should not be fully released until they have a case manager, they have their claims and benefits in place, and a transition plan. Because the goal is to get folks into a job, a training opportunity, a career as much as possible. Because I've talked to veterans. The biggest thing you lose when you leave the military is that purpose. And for some people, like I went to basic training at 18. Some people, I've met veterans that joined at 15, 16, 17 in reserve units, and then it's all they've known. They've never written a resume. So we need to make sure that we have almost a concierge service helping folks transition, and we don't release them until we have everything resolved. That then, James, would reduce the claims in the future down to a much smaller number because they're resolved. I've also seen, by us streamlining some of the approvals for hearing loss in some of the injuries that are very, very common in operational trades like the combat arms and the Navy and operators like pilots and navigators in the Air Force. Let's accelerate those. Benefit of the doubt, getting to yes for the veteran was the term I used, so that we can then clear the consideration even more. I got wait times down as minister, but I was relentless in the pursuit. I brought veterans into my office. We had a SWAT team, and I made sure that we had a tracking system, and we looked at every case, not with the file number, a family name, because every case is a family. So we have a suite of programs. I think we need more support for mental health treatment. That's obviously where my background comes for my passion on mental health. Is I've seen firsthand if there's more options for someone with a mental injury or mental distress from service. If you give them options, get it to them quick, it can avoid family breakdown, it can avoid addiction or other issues that an untreated a mental condition, mental injury can lead to. And I'm also very keen for Veterans Affairs, wherever possible, to partner with veteran organizations. I helped create one. I've worked with great ones, Wounded Warriors, others, combating homelessness, a whole range of things, building that capacity, the force multiplier that I talked about earlier, James. And when I was in Gander, at the end of my day, I got together for a beer with a military buddy of mine who lives in Gander. Lots of folks there, and I also got to see that piece of steel from the Twin Towers at the airport in Gander. We'll never forget what that community did on 9/11. I was on duty that day in 9/11, and in Halifax they took some aircraft as well. But the outpouring in your community, the come from away story as we know it now, but is incredible. It showed our country at its best.
So I've got one question for you folks before we take another question for Erin O'Toole. If you plan to vote for the Conservative Party and Erin O'Toole in the next the election on election day, press 1 now. If you're going to vote for one of the other parties, press 2, and if you're still undecided, press 3. Our next question comes from Kevin, and he's got a question about the federal budget. Kevin, you're live with Erin O'Toole. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, Mr. O'Toole. Well, I guess I'm really concerned with, the unprecedented amount of borrowing. I guess specifically around COVID-19, but even prior to that, the amount of borrowing in the country, provincially and federally, is really concerning to me because, ultimately, my daughter, my kids, her kids will eventually have to pay for that. So is there a plan in your platform to rein in spending at all, or how are you going to manage the budget and more specifically reduce the amount of borrowing that's happening at this time?
Thank you for the question, Kevin. And, Michael, one thing I love about Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, you notice how so many people thanked me for my service.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we just talked to James. I thanked him. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians historically have served at a very high proportion per capita. And of course, Canada Day also marks the day where we remember the loss for the Newfoundland Regiment and the Forget-Me-Nots. So there's such a culture of that remembrance in Newfoundland. It's amazing. So Kevin, you're 100% right. Before COVID, let's look before the crisis. Mr. Trudeau ran a major deficit every year. I think his last one was about $36 billion pre-COVID. This from a prime minister who promised never to run a deficit more than $10 billion. He never got close to $10 billion. It was mainly in the $20 to $25 billion range in good economic times when there were strong employment numbers, and he was raising taxes. This person, the prime minister who said budgets balance themselves, the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, said, in 2070. That's unacceptable. And as you said, your kids, our kids, my 10-year-old son, our 15-year-old daughter, they're going to be burdened with Mr. Trudeau's failed leadership. So what we've done coming out of COVID-19, and this is in Canada's recovery plan, Kevin, our fifth pillar is getting the budget back into balance over the course of the decade. Why have I chosen that? Because we have to get the country working again. We have to help people. We have to make sure that we help highly impacted sectors like the tourism sector in Newfoundland and Labrador. So important. All Canadians, well, especially outside of the province, know those iconic photos of the whales and the icebergs and the sheets blowing in the wind. Like, there's such an amazing tourism. Fogo Island, it's world famous for its hospitality. It's decimated right now. So we have a Kickstart accelerator in there, a job surge plan that will help people get back to work. We will rebuild Main Street. We will have a Dine and Discover program where we're going to actually let Canadians travel and explore this amazing country and get a tax rebate over what they explore next year, when we can get out and help those businesses explore the True North strong and free. And that will kickstart our recovery. So I make no apologies for the fact that we're taking a very balanced and reasonable approach by helping people get back to work, helping restore small businesses in crisis, helping with mental health and giving the provinces the capacity to deal with being prepared in their healthcare and long-term care systems, building up that capacity for domestic vaccines and other items, and balancing the budget. That's important. But in the short term, we're here to get the economy surging, get people back to work, heal the division in our country, and be prudent. As you know, the Conservative government got back to balance over the course of 5 years from the 2008-2009 global recession. That was done keeping taxes low and focusing on economic growth. We're going to do that again, but over a longer term because the challenges are larger. But Kevin, I'm very optimistic that if we can get the offshore going again, if we can help highly impacted sectors, I've launched some really innovative policy for startups and helping them scale up in Canada. I think we can surge the economy in all sectors and in all regions and take a 10-year plan to get the budget back into balance, but actually deliver. Mr. Trudeau promises balanced budgets, safe drinking water, ethical conduct. Everything he promises, he doesn't deliver on. This is our commitment. This is our promise.
So let's squeeze in a question from Jerry asking about equalization. Jerry, you're live now with Erin O'Toole.
Good evening, Mr. O'Toole, and thank you again for your service and for taking the time to engage in conversation with us this evening. My question is there any hope in the near future of Canada's equalization payment formula being reviewed and changed so that the province of Newfoundland and Labrador can receive substantially more funding than it does at present, which is no funding or, at best, very little? Thank you, Mr. O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Jerry, for the question. As I said earlier when I talked to Joe, we've got a divided country, and we've got to restore faith in our Confederation. I was in St. John's. I sailed through the Narrows and was there with HMC at St. John's for the 50th anniversary of Newfoundland and Labrador joining Confederation. They called it Soiree 99. It was incredible to see our most recent province join our amazing Confederation. And we need to make sure we work together, we respect one another, and we respect the diversity of our economy. And so what I announced when I was in St. John's about a month ago, Jerry, was fixing fiscal stabilization and providing an equalization rebate by backdating the changes to make sure that the resource revenue drop-off that Newfoundland and Labrador experienced, Alberta experienced, Saskatchewan experienced, is addressed. It's unfair when there's a massive drop in revenues for a province for the old calculation for equalization to amount in them overpaying. So all the provinces agree that that needs to be fixed by fixing fiscal stabilization. I will deliver that as Prime Minister. As I said earlier as well, the Offshore Rebound Fund, our $1.5 billion commitment, is focused at getting the offshore back rolling because it is a quarter of the Newfoundland and Labrador economy. This is something Mr. Trudeau likes to ignore when he says he's going to transition those sectors. That means transitioning thousands of family jobs. We think these are great jobs. We think these allow Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to be self-reliant, to have ripple effects throughout the entire province. And so part of my goal, having been a Prime Minister that would have lived in many parts of the country through my military service, I didn't live in Newfoundland and Labrador, but as I said, I had some incredible experiences having served on her ship in the Royal Canadian Navy and serving alongside exceptional folks from the province. So I will be there to make sure we restore that faith in our Confederation and work together. And the equalization rebate and working collaboratively with the provinces is part of that. So help is on the way, Jerry, but Newfoundland and Labrador need real voices in Ottawa. If you look at what's happened over the last few years, it's basically been all Liberals. It's empty voices in Ottawa doing Justin Trudeau's bidding. I want strong people like Clifford, like Sharon, like Carol, like Matthew, like Shane, like our candidates from across the province fighting for you in Ottawa. And I'm hoping to earn your trust, so check out our Canada's Recovery Plan.
Well, thank you so much, Erin. Our Conservative team is absolutely ready to deliver on Canada's Recovery Plan and stand up for hardworking Canadians and their families. If you do not have a chance to ask your question tonight, please stay on the line and leave a message for our staff, or leave your question in the comments below if you're watching online. Your question is important, and we'd like the chance to respond to you. Erin?
Thank you. You know, I was there in Newfoundland and Labrador a month ago, Michael, and I was forgetting what my friends and colleagues on the ground there called the Liberal MPs, because they're basically not seen, and they haven't been fighting. And as I said, they feel the offshore and other sectors are under attack. They've called them the Silent Six.
Wow.
The Silent Six. There's Jack Harris is the seventh, but he's retiring. I want 7 strong voices. I want to see strong representation for the Conservatives in Ottawa from Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think if you see what we've talked about tonight, we have a plan, Canada's Recovery Plan. We have an incredible team, and we want to earn your trust. We will be there on the ground, but this has been great to talk to thousands of people tonight. Too many Canadians have been completely left behind by the Silent Six, the Liberals in Newfoundland and Labrador, but also the NDP and Greens who don't support your economy. It's time to get Newfoundland and Labrador's economy back on track so that together, all provinces, everyone in Canada, can secure the future after a difficult 15 months for our country. So thank you for letting me into your home tonight. Thank you to the exceptional Michael Barrett, who will be once again busy on the ethics file, I'm sure, in the coming days and weeks. Please check out our website. Look us up on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Please download Canada's Recovery Plan. It is flying. I've heard the downloads were being overwhelmed at first, but please check it out. And if you have any questions, get them to us. And make sure we work together to secure the future. Good night and be well.